Perak Yud Zayin Pasuk Aleph. Ki Matzei B'Kirbecha, when they're found in your midst, V'Achad She'arecha, one of your gates, Asher Hashem Lokecha Nosein Loch, which Hashem gives you, Ish O Isha Asher Yaseh Es Hara B'nei Hashem Lokecha Lavor Brisa. When you find a man or a woman who does what is wrong in the eyes of Hashem to transgress the covenant. Now, here, whenever the Torah talks about transgressing the covenant, what is considered the most severe avera in Torah generally is what? Well, idol worship. Idol worship. There are all sorts of baddies for Jews. One of them is buying retail. But that's that one. We don't put him to death for that. He commits suicide for that. So we could rely on him. But here we're talking about idol. A person is going to go and he's going to worship idols. So what does he do? Now here the commentaries point out. Normally the Torah talks about it gives a command in the male form, whereas here the command is given where a man or a woman goes and worship idols. And then one of the commentaries points out, men are always up to mischief. Men you can never trust. Men are always subject to the men have a much bigger yetzer hara than women. That's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives a wife in order to keep men in line. That's one of the jobs of wife. That's why when the Torah originally speaks about the wife, she said she's going to be an ezer kinegdo. She will be a helpmate opposite him. So one of the ways the Gemara understands, she will be, if he merits it, she will be a helpmate, and if he does not, if he is found undeserving, she will be opposite him. She'll fight him. But there are other commentaries that say, no, it's not a joke, and this is not a joke, by the way. She will be a helpmate by being opposite him. Ezer kinegdo, the way a wife helps a husband is because the wife is the one that is opposite him. She opposes him sometimes, which helps him get his act together. Because if it was left to men, if men were left on their own, men would generally end up in prison. And therefore, the wife is there to keep him. Women, all through Jewish history, you see that it was the women who did not want to worship the golden calf. And the Gemara says it was in the merit of the righteous women that the Jewish people got out of Egypt. And the women are always the ones keeping the men out of trouble. So here, the Torah is a little bit out of character, where it says, if it would say, well, if there's a man who goes and worships idols, okay, men will do anything for money. Men will do anything, especially where the Gemara says that the Jewish people worshipped idols. One of the reasons they got involved in idol worship is because there was immorality available. Idol worship, often many of the pagan rites involved various forms of vulgarity and immorality. So the men are hot to trot. The women are generally can be trusted in this area. So why is it that specifically in this mitzvah the Torah says if a man or a woman, men I understand, why women? Why are you including women over here? And the answer is because idol worship also involves sometimes people can be drawn into it by some sort of sensationalism. It could be somebody performs a miracle or somebody does something sensational, and women will be subject. Women are prone to are impressionable. Women are impressionable. It's sometimes when you see a miracle, you see something supernatural, even though there may be an explanation for it, your emotions are being touched. And women are certainly emotionally prone, and therefore your emotions are being drawn when it's working on your emotions. So then the Torah, what do you call it? Has to include women, which, by the way, would tell you. This is my own idea. Anytime a man reacts emotionally to what's going on around him, as opposed to using his intelligence, if a man reacts emotionally, then you're behaving like a woman. And if you're letting your emotions guide you in life in general, and now we are made up of emotions. As Rabbi Schiller always says, we are not logical, we are psychological. Human beings are not logical, human beings are psychological. There is with all of our great logic, as men, there is also a human element. We are not simple, we're not machines. But the Torah says over here it could happen to a man or a woman, and they are drawn to worship idols. By the way, just as totally parenthetically, gentlemen, but I'll tell you something that you should remember this when you get married. You should pay me for this. There's a statement, Benjamin, you're laughing, but I'm still waiting for the check. You're married, remember? Make out the checks to Kaplan with a K. There's a statement that the Gemara makes about women. The Gemara makes many statements about women. One thing the Gemara says is that women have a greater intuition than men. Do you know that? The Gemara says that. Women have a greater intuition than men. A woman has an insight into guests that men, the Gemara says, a woman has an insight into guests that men do not have. What that means is you can have a guest in your house, and he's at your house for Shabbos, and the husband says, wow, here's a great guy, he's interesting, he's enchanting and everything else. And the wife says, yeah, count the silverware. Right? Because she saw something that you didn't see. Now, I found that statement of the Gemara, which is made 2,000 years ago or 1,500 years ago, I found that very enchanting because they've done, in sociology, they've done studies where they will take a picture and distort the image of the picture. And then you have to look at this distorted image of a human being, and you have to say what emotion are they experiencing, because the picture was taken in real time. And you have to be able to say what emotion are they experiencing in this distorted image. And the women obliterate the men across the board on these tests. They obliterate them. And so a man will look at it and he'll say, wow, a guy's laughing. He must have just heard a joke. And a woman said, that guy's in intense pain. And it turns out that in real time what happened was a bowling ball had just fallen on his foot. Right, and it turned out and they obliterate the women across the boards. The women obliterate the men across the board on this, and it's just very interesting. They have a sense, they have an intuition, which they do. There's another statement in sociology. They found that men, they have what's called spatial skill testing. Spatial, S-P-A-T-I-A-L. The classic example of spatial skills is map reading. I don't know why that is, but apparently it is. And stereotypically, you always have the wife who's looking at the map on TV. You've seen it a dozen times where wife's looking at the map, the husband's asking her for directions. They text her and says, not like that, and he turns the map. She's looking at the map. They've done that on TV, do it all on TV. In the spatial testing, the men obliterated the women across the boards on spatial skills. So obviously we're wired differently. But on the emotions and on the senses, on the intuition, it's frightening, the women's intuition. The Gemara says women, it was in the merit of the Jewish women that the men were redeemed from Egypt. The women did not worship the golden calf. So one of the statements made in the Talmud, which again is not in any way meant in the pejorative, it is simply a statement of reality, is women are a nation unto themselves. Noshim am bifnei atzman. That's a statement the Talmud makes. Women are a nation unto themselves. So I was thinking about that statement. What do they ask? Obviously, we always make the jokes, men and women are different, and men are from Mars, women are from Venus, whatever it is. I think there's if the Talmud chose to say it, why didn't the Talmud just say women are different than men? So I think that the answer lies in the fact that the Gemara says they're a different nation. Well, what makes you unique as a nation? You have a different language. You speak a different language, and I don't understand your language. And men often are, it doesn't say it the other way. It doesn't say men are a separate nation. You know why? And I think this is very true. Because they understand us. They understand us a little better than we want them to understand us. And when we have to deal with them, we're clueless. And there's nothing negative over it. There's nothing pejorative. It's simply true. A woman could say something and you got to figure it out. A man, you will experience this when you come home. When you're married, you will come home and you'll say to your wife, you want to go out for dinner for tonight? And your wife will say to you, what do you mean? And we're like, what word didn't you understand? Do you want to go? Yeah. Would you like to go with me to eat? What? Oh. So when she says, what do you mean? Because she suspects several different things over here. Well, you're not happy with my cooking. You're not happy with my family. You think my mother has a big mouth. There's a lot of possibilities that go through that. And therefore, a woman says to you, what do you mean? And the reason she says that is because if she wanted to go out to eat, and you will experience this, and you will think of me when it happens, and I will laugh, you will come home, and your wife will say to you something like, do you think that picture is straight on the wall? And you'll be looking at the picture and say, well, picture is as straight as it's always been. I haven't touched it, neither has she. She's asking me if it's straight. What she's telling me is she feels off balance. She's been in the house too long. She wants to go out to eat. And therefore, the answer to, is that picture straight, is, do you want milchiks or fleischiks? That's the answer. That's the answer to the question. Now, you're laughing, and it takes time till you figure this out. They are a nation, and you could ask Mr. Fogel's married longer than the whole bunch of us put together, and you could ask if it's true or not. And it's 100% true. There's nothing negative here. There's nothing deprecating here. There is a different form of communication, and therefore the Torah says over here that even a woman who are on higher level, naturally intuitive, natural. A connection at a spiritual level. If you stop and ask yourself, who's got a more natural sense of shame, men or women? I mean, it's clear that women have a greater sense of shame. Can you imagine what look what the world looks like? Imagine what the world would look like in a moral, if women's moral level was like men, imagine what the world would look like. So here, because of idol worship and the lure of idol worship, a woman could be drawn in. So what happens to this guy? 3 lines from the bottom. Vayelech vayavod Elohim acherim. He goes and he worships foreign gods. Vayishtachu lohem. He bows down to them. V'lashemesh, or to the sun, ola yareach, or the moon, ola chotzva hashemayim, or to any of the heavenly hosts, asher lo tzivisi, which I did not command. So what do? V'hu gadloch, you are told. V'shamata, you hear about it. V'darash tehetev, you investigate well. Top of page 1026. V'hine emes nochon hadovar, it is true. Na'asasa hatoiva hazos v'Yisrael, this abomination was committed. A Jew went and worshipped idols. What do? V'hotseisa esa isha hu o esa isha, you take out that man or that woman. Asher asu esa dovar harazu, did this evil thing. El she'orecha, fourth line, first word on the fourth line. Esa isha, uskaltam ba'avonim v'mesu. You shall stone them till dead. Al pi shnayim edim o shlosh edim yumas hameis, lo yumas al pi ed echad. He's not killed by one witness, you need two witnesses. This we learned last man. One more pasuk. Yad ha'edim tiyeh bo barishon miso. It is the witnesses themselves who have to throw the first stone. V'yad kol ha'am ba'acharona, and then the people, uv'yad ha'ra b'kirvecha. Then you must eradicate the evil from your midst. What's going on here? So when it comes to the skila punishment, there are 4 forms of capital punishment. There is skila, which is stoning, sreifa, which is burning, which is not done with a fire. Sreifa is they take a piece of molten lead and they heat it up, and then they open the convicted person's mouth and they throw the lead down his throat, and the insides are burnt out from the hot lead. That's for somebody. One example: somebody who commits adultery with his mother-in-law would get that punishment.
What is it called?
It's called sreifa, burning. Yeah, they use it for an Alka-Seltzer commercial now. How to plop, fizz. Oh, what a relief it is. That was okay. Now there is also hereg, which is beheading, and chenek, which is strangulation. Now, the number one punishment. What's that?
Mother-in-law is quite bad.
Yeah, mother-in-law is very bad, right? Remember, we're not just giving this out. We're not talking about a guy who was talking during shul. We're talking about a guy committed adultery with his mother-in-law. This guy's got some issues. So that's the what do you call it? That's the punishment. Now, the way the skila punishment worked was like this. They took the guy who's convicted, and again, if you've learned the halachas, it takes a long time until you convict him, and they try to get him off the punishment, not necessarily the crime, but they try to find a way not to punish him. If there are witnesses, and if the witnesses stand up under cross-examination, which is very easy to trip them up, and the guy is still convinced. It's not like there were people dying all over the place in Judaism. It was very, very rare, because I'll hold for a few minutes, Jim. It was very rare that somebody would die, and that somebody would worship idols. It was rare they would convict him, but let's say they did. So what the Torah is teaching you, what has to be done, they would put him on a platform which is approximately twice his height. They push him off the platform. If he does not die from the fall, so then they drop a stone on him. And if he does not die from that stone, so then everybody else throws stone on him until he dies. That's the punishment that the Torah says. Now, here, I'm not going into the punishment itself as much as Yad ha'edim tiyeh bo, it's the witnesses who testified against him. They're the ones who have to carry out the execution. There's no professional executioner in Beis Din. The witnesses convicted him. The witnesses have to be the witnesses testified him. They have to be the ones who carry out the punishment. Now, there are two reasons why it has to be the witnesses. Anybody have an idea? What would two read? What do you say in a bit? What's your name? Shlomo, go ahead. A couple of Shlomos, yeah. There's a Shlomo also, okay? I was going to say, are you brothers, but obviously not. Yeah, go ahead.
Because if they're lying, there's a slight chance that they might not do it.
Very good, very good. In other words, the first thing, even if I'm willing to lie, you pay me to be a false witness. I'm willing to do that. Not only I'm willing to have a guy die. But it's a far cry willing to have a guy die and me being willing to kill. Listen, I'm willing to lie. I'll sell my soul for money, and I'm even if it means having the guy die, I don't care as long as I have to see it. But I'm not a murderer. I'm not about to go. Once we get to the point where, if I lie, I got to kill the guy. That I'm not willing to do. That I'm not willing to, unless he's a White Sox fan. I'm not willing to do that, So that I'm not going to do, right? So that right. That's the first thing. What's the second thing? Shlomo, what were you going to say?
I was actually going to say what he said, but if you're asking for a second.
There's a second reason here that the commentaries point out. Yeah.
I would guess that if they were lying, then they, I don't know, they did commit murder.
Okay. Okay.
and have that sin on their hands.
Okay, so that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create it is a safeguard against false testimony of sorts. There's a safeguard. So I'll tell you what the commentaries say, because this is a fairly it's a fundamental concept. The concept is like this. You know, I was once in a prison. I was twice in prison, arrested. I was arrested. No, I didn't kill the White Sox. On that, I made sure there were no witnesses. I was actually arrested once for jaywalking and once for disturbing the peace. So I was actually in a lockup. I was in a lockup twice in my life, but I'm not talking about that. I went to a prison here in Israel. They had a program to do kiruv in prisons. They were educating prisoners. So we went to a what do you call it prison? A maximum security prison where these guys were murderers, rapists, armed robbers, very hard criminals. And I gave a class in the prison. There was a little old man there. I went down there with the guy who took me down there, who was running the program, and I was chatting with him. And there's a little old man there, sweet, looks like your Uncle Charlie. Looks like the candy man in Shul. And he's wiping off the table. He was cleaning off the tables in the dining room. And I said to the guy, well, what's he here for? So he says, well, he became a widower the do-it-yourself way. Right. And he said to me, he cooked his wife. That's all he said. I didn't ask for any more details. That's what he said. Okay? Now, why did I bring that up? When you think of a murderer, what do you think of? Picture a murderer. If I say he's a murderer, what do you think of? Some gruesome looking. All of a sudden you see a guy, looks like the sweetest little old man down the block, used to mow his lawn, and this guy's a murderer. What it does to me, it has effect on me. It reduces the concept of murder in my mind. Oh, I guess murder isn't that, not that bad and not that such bad people murder. The whole thing is reduced. When it's in my mind, I'm thinking of it in terms of absolutely unspeakable, cannot happen, that sort of thing. All of a sudden, it's suddenly reduced because, it's just, sweet little old guy who does it. The Torah says, these two guys who witnessed, what did they witness? They witnessed somebody worshiping idols. Their own defense system has been tainted. Now, we saw a guy worship idols. Maybe it's saying, you've been affected. When you see Shabbos desecration, so a person, if you're born and raised in the United States, you see cars driving on Shabbos. It's not necessarily Shabbos desecration because a lot of those people may be non-Jewish. If you're living in Israel, so if you're born and raised in Bnei Brak, you never see Shabbos desecration. Then you spend one Shabbos in Tel Aviv. In all day Shabbos, you see cars driving. Your own sensitivity to Shabbos is going to be decreased. I guess driving on Shabbos isn't so bad. You just saw somebody worship idols. You testified against a Bezin. You have to execute him so that you reinstate in yourself the severity of idol worship. You're going to be dropped the stones on him because you have to make a statement for yourself. That's why it says, Ubiyarta harabi kirbecha. The plain meaning is you have to eradicate the evil from your midst. Get these sinners out of here. Ubiyarta harami kirbecha. You, the witnesses, have absorbed some of that ra just by seeing it. Therefore, you have to be the one to execute him in order to remove that from your midst. That's a principle in life in general. When you see something, we in our society have been victimized by this. 30 years ago, 20 years ago, certain words, certain behaviors in our society would say, you blushed. If you blushed, you were embarrassed to mention it, you didn't talk about it. Nowadays, if you don't talk about it, you're phobic. It's your fault. It's your fault for being decent because the whole society has moved in the opposite direction. And our sensitivities are completely dulled. Therefore, the Torah says you have to keep those sensitivities sharpened. And the way you're going to keep them sharpened over here is you're the one who carries out the penalty so that you see what happens. When you see what happens, then it won't be so, it won't have that effect on you. Yeah.
And you're obliged.
You're obliged. Yeah, you have to do it.
What happens if you see something? Is there a penalty for that? Or?
There's no penalty for seeing it. There's no penalty for seeing it.
Then not testify.
There's no. You have an obligation to testify. If you see something, you have an obligation to testify. Testimony in Torah in general, you have an obligation. If a person decides I don't want to do it, so they're breaking that law, just like if they're wearing shatnez, right? You have an obligation to get involved. You have an obligation. If you see something, you have an obligation to testify. Absolutely. I say, well, yeah, but I don't want to have to. Listen, the Torah is not about your choices. I don't want to have to do it. Yeah, but you're going to have to do it. If somehow this mitzvah came to you, you're going to have to do it. What if I'm walking by a river, somebody's drowning? I don't want to get my car. I know how to save lives. I just don't want, I got a brand new suit and I don't want to get it wet. Well, that's too bad. You're going to have to get it wet. Then we'll see if you get payment or not. But you don't have a choice. You don't have a choice. You have to do it. There was one great rabbi, a Hasidic rabbi, who was standing on the bridge on Shabbos, and he was watching people driving in Israel on Shabbos. And as every car drove by, he went, Mazel Tov! Another car, Mazel Tov. Another car, Mazel Tov. Somebody said, what do you say, Mazel Tov? He says, listen, Jews are driving on Shabbos. Obviously, it must be life-threatening. Somebody must go into hospital to give birth. So it must be, Mazel Tov. Somebody must, Mazel Tov. A beautiful approach, a beautiful approach to the subject. And there's a truck driving on Shabbos. Mazel Tov. Must be twins. And they took him in a truck. Oh, it's a freezer truck. Okay, I don't know. It's a beautiful approach, but a person sees it, and your sensitivity becomes, no question about it. A lot of things that happen, if you stop and think about it in life, I would say that every single person in this room, myself included, at a certain point in life, usually when you're a young teen, at a certain point in life, there must have been something that you said to yourself, I would never do that, I would never drink that, I would never smoke that, I would never snort that, there's something that you said I would never do. And maybe a week, a month, a year, or a couple of years later, you find yourself doing it. Now, what happened over here? The objective reality of the thing did not change. Either it was wrong or it wasn't wrong. The objective reality didn't change. What changed was you changed. Your sensitivities were dulled by it. That's what the Torah is telling you here. Okay, let's go on to the next part. Yeah.
Sorry, just a quick question. It's quite hard for me to reconcile this concept with life right now. So the idea that, I would stone someone for breaking Shabbos.
Nowadays we don't do it.
We don't do it, but only because there's not a
Beis Din.
No, but if there was, we would.
If there was a Beis Din, theoretically, if somebody was guilty of the crime, yes, absolutely. All the laws of the Torah apply.
A lot of people.
No, we wouldn't, because in order to stone someone for Shabbos desecration, let's say, you need two witnesses who warn the person and say to the person, if you do that, you will be stoned in Beis Din. He needs within a certain amount of time, like 2 or 3 seconds, to say to you, in spite of that, I will do it. And then he needs to start doing it. Now, if you have a secular Jew, somebody who is not yet religious, and he was raised in a secular society, Beis Din will say, did you understand you would really be executed? No. Who executes you for Shabbos? He's off the hook already. He has to have understood, it has to be clear to us he understood the warning. Do you think that what's that? No, we can make a projection. Beis Din will make a projection. If a guy was born and raised in Mea Shearim, and he's been in Cheder his entire life, we could assume that he knew this halacha and he understood the warning, and if he said so. But again, let's you know what? I'm glad you asked the question. Let's put it in a realistic perspective. Imagine you're sitting at a table on Shabbos. Let's talk about Shabbos desecration. A guy's about to go into a bathroom, and two witnesses come over and say, by the way, if you flick that light switch, you're going to die in Beis Din. What do you think? Do you think a guy's going to give up his life to flick a light switch? He's been warned by two witnesses. He's like, I'll say, you know what? I'll do it in the dark. I'll manage. A guy's sitting at the Shabbos table. He's about to pull a tomato out of his salad. Borer. Capital offense. So two witnesses are to say, if you pull that tomato out of your salad, you're going to die in Beis Din. Most people will just say, forget it, I'll have the gefilte fish, just forget about it. I won't eat the salad, I'll have the coleslaw instead. Nobody's going to die for a salad. Nobody's going to die for it. How often do you think it would happen even under the worst of the circumstances? And certainly where a secular Jew who's never learned Torah and doesn't, what are you, out of your mind? In liberal 21st century world, you're telling me I'm going to die because I flicked the light switch? No, he doesn't take you seriously. Nobody's going to, in a Torah society where people are God-fearing Jews, and a guy knows the halacha, and then the witnesses cross, how often do you think it happens? Not that many people die for Shabbos desecration. Once in a while, it could happen, and it did happen. It's not rampant, because if you do it unintentionally, you're also not liable. If you walk into a bathroom on Shabbos, you go, oops, flip a light switch. You're not liable for the death penalty. You have to do tshuva because you didn't tape down the light switch. You should have taken more responsibility. Sometimes you do a double. Oops, you get a double. You get a double oops. Then you got the guy who's traumatized. Stand there, oops. Okay, but you're not liable for the death penalty. That's considered unintentional. That's unintentional. If a person goes in, a person says, I'm going to flip a light switch. And if people say, don't do it or you're going to die. Okay, so this guy's a flagrant Shabbos desecrator. It's very, very, very rare. It'd be very rare. Yeah, please.
If a person flicks light switch by accident, He has to bring a sacrifice?
In the time of the Beis Hamikdash, he would. In the time of the Beis Hamikdash, that's a great way to get people to be. Remember, gentlemen, I want to tell you something. You know, sometimes people say, how can you get through a whole Shabbos without flicking a light switch? I mean, honestly. I guarantee you, next Shabbos, every single one of you could get through Shabbos without flicking a light switch. You know why? I'll offer you $100 if you make it through next Shabbos without flicking. You know what you'll do? You will either tape down all the light switches in the home, or you will tape your hands to your sides, or you will sabotage the entire electrical supply of the city in order to get that $100. I have full faith in you, Shlomo. I know you'll do it. I know you. I know you like better than you know yourself. The answer is, you know why you flick a light switch? Because it wasn't that important to you. The same way there are people that you've met in your life, there are always these people who are accident prone. There's always a kid on your block, he's accident prone. You know, Johnny was accident prone. He's always walking around with a splint or stitches or a limp or something. So what they call accident prone, we call Tarzan-like behavior, right? He's a Vildachaya. He's always jumping around. He's always jumping out of cars. He's on a motorcycle. He's sitting on the back of a motorcycle. Sure, he's accident prone. A guy who's sitting on base manager with a Baba Kama is not accident prone. The guy who's walking around with a splint means that he was doing wild things. I have found in my experience there are people who are halachically accident prone. There's always those stories you read about this guy. He was on his way from Denver to New York, and he ended up somewhere in Iowa for Shabbos because he didn't have enough time. Sure, he left himself 45 minutes to drive from Denver to New York before on Erev Shabbos. So he ended up in Iowa for Shabbos in a blizzard. Right? There is a blizzard lurking. Some people always end up in that situation. Some people never end up. You know where it depends on? It depends on how seriously you take halacha. If I'm conscientious about halacha, I'm not going to do anything to get myself in trouble on Erev Shabbos. Don't go traveling 2 hours before Shabbos, and don't go, some guy picks up a piece of fruit and says, I don't remember if I made a bracha or not. Or I don't remember if I benched, or I don't remember if I did this, I don't remember if I did that. Well, if it's important enough to you to remember, you mean you don't remember if you just talked to God for 5 minutes? I don't remember if I benched. Well, one thing I can tell you. So the halacha to say, you don't know, so you do have to bench again, you don't have to bench again. One thing is clear. Whatever your benching was, it was not a humdinger of a benching. If you can't even remember if you did it, that was not, you got to win any awards as a benching, right? If it was really important to you, you wouldn't forget. That's what halacha is. Halacha, there's some people always in trouble. Sure, why didn't you tape down your light switches before Shabbos? In our house, that's one of the things we do every year of Shabbos, tape down all the light switches. And if that doesn't work, tape the children down. Right? Tape something down. Always walk around with tape. I got a lot of rolls of tape in my house. It works like a charm. If it's important enough to you, you'll do it. If it's important enough to you, do it. If it's not important enough to you, you won't do it. That's the rule. Guy says, I ate something. I think it might have been treif. I think it might have been treif. Now you're coming to me after you ate it? Well, I looked at it. It said OR on the package. So I thought that stood for Orthodox. OR. Yeah, sorry. It's not going to cut it. It's not going to cut it. Why don't you find out the symbol and ask me about the symbol first before you put it in your mouth? Not to come after me and say, wow, that's tasted remarkably like pork. Yeah, what did it say on it? Well, it's porculated pork chips. Yeah, well, there's a reason why it had an OR on it. Well, don't you think maybe you should be able, if you're conscientious, you would check if something here isn't making sense. If it really means enough to you, you would think, kashrus is like that. Kashrus is like that. If I told you, oh, by the way, gentlemen, I heard a rumor that there might be cyanide in Coke. Think any of you would drink a Coke today? I don't believe anybody would drink a Coke today. You would find out, what was he talking about? Was he talking about Israel, America, China? Where was the cyanide? How many bottles was it? Before anything else, you hear cyanide, you're not going to go near a Coke. If a person sees non-kosher food the same way, I'm not putting that in my mouth until I find out if it's kosher. I get my own children come over. My kids, sometimes they get a candy. Daddy, do we eat this hechsher? You know what I always say to them? I always say to my kids, because there are different levels of hechsher. If it's completely unacceptable, I said, no, you can't eat that. But let's say it is acceptable. It's acceptable. I personally like to something a little better. I always say to my children, I don't know what you do. I personally don't eat it. I personally don't eat that. Yeah, but do we eat it? I don't know what you do. I don't eat this hechsher. Right? Because I saved myself on two fronts over here. Because then my kid, if I say to the kid, no, we don't eat that hechsher. How come you have to be so severe? Bela's father, he lost that idea. I want the fight. I say, I don't eat the hechsher. You want to eat it, you have to decide for yourself. Not once have my kids called my bluff. Not once have they eaten it. And I wasn't bluffing either. I don't mind if they eat it. I genuinely don't mind if they eat it, as long as they know it's kosher. You want to do, I don't want them to come, Daddy, how come you have to be so stringent? Not once have the kids eaten it when I've said that. They say, yeah, but what do we do? I say, I don't know what you do. You have to decide for yourself. My 9-year-old once, my son was 9 years old. My wife says to me, she's having a problem in the kitchen. I come into the kitchen, what's the problem? He doesn't want a bench. He's 9 years old, he doesn't want a bench. I said, why don't you want a bench? He said, because I want another cookie Mommy said I can't have. So I'm not benching. So I said to him, don't bench. I don't care if you bench or not. It's between you and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What's it got to do with me? And I walked out of the room. Guess what? He benched. He benched. Yeah, I can push my buttons on. That way you can threaten me with religion? I can push my buttons. So if a person understands that you have to be conscientious, then you won't have the accidents won't happen to you. Okay, let's go on to the next parsha.
Masterclass in parenting.
Believe me, it's easier to talk about it than to do it. That I can tell you. Yes.
Do the laws of testimony change if it's a relative?
Yeah, you're not allowed to testify against relatives. You're not allowed to. There are certain halachic rulings because either you're too closely related. Certain relatives cannot testify because it's assumed they hate each other.
Right.
It says a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law are not allowed to testify for each other. Because there's you're laughing, but it's not a joke. It's the most difficult, tricky relationship in the world. And you see that the Gemara mentions. One of the benefits of Judaism is we're willing to say what everybody is thinking. We're willing to say whatever. We're not ashamed of anything. We have no compunction. You know, there's a bracha that you make when a parent dies. So when somebody dies, there's a bracha you make. Baruch dayan ha'emes. That God is. When they die, at a certain point, you make the bracha. When they die, that we justify God, even though it's harsh and it's painful. A bracha is made. Baruch dayan ha'emes. When somebody dies, you make a bracha. Do you know that when a parent dies, you make that bracha, and besides that bracha, you also make a bracha when something good happens? If something good happens to the person, you make a bracha called Hatov V'Ametiv. When a parent dies, a father, and there's an inheritance, do you know that the children make a bracha Hatov V'Ametiv simultaneously? They make a dayan ha'emes, they could be crying, grief-stricken, and they make a bracha Hatov V'Ametiv because now they got an inheritance. As soon as he dies, they've inherited the money. So, most people would think, now isn't that uncouth? In a moment like this, that's what you're thinking of? You know what our answer is? Yes. Yes, because we're human beings. And yes, and we know what human beings are thinking. Yes, absolutely. And in a moment that the father dies and leaves a boodle to his kids, the kids are thinking, oh, that's too bad. Oh, that's too good. Right? We know that. We're not ashamed to say it. We're not ashamed to say it. So we're always willing to say what nobody else is willing to say. So when it comes to, to a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law, we understand that there is a natural tension there. The mother feels that's her son. I've put 25 good years into him, and now some little girl's walking off with everything, all the hard work. Now some little girl's walking off with him, and his loyalties are going to change, and they're halachically obligated to change. And the little girl's thinking, you're right. And therefore there's a natural enmity between them, and sister-in-laws as well. There's a natural enmity. Co-wives. The halachah says cannot testify for each other. A man can be married by Torah law to 2 wives. Whether he should or not is something else, but he's allowed to be married to 2 wives. They're not allowed to testify for each other. He's allowed up to 18. But at a time, no. Anybody's allowed to marry 18 wives. The limit is 18. We learn it from a king. The limit is 18 wives. But a person who is married to 18 wives. Oh, maybe maybe you're right. Maybe it's 4. It's 4, and the king may be. You could be right. It could be right. Whatever it is, a man's allowed by Torah law multiple wives. Nowadays we're not allowed. But at the time, in certain Sephardi communities, they are. But a man's married to 2 wives. Could you understand there's a natural enmity between those 2 wives because they're competing for the same husband. Therefore, we can't trust them to testify for each other because one they may try to fix the other one's wagon. And the Torah says that. It says openly in the Gemara. So all these things we recognize. And certainly, if people are related, a father and a son, or brothers, siblings, so certainly we have to be concerned that they're going to testify in their benefit. And therefore, there are certain disqualifications.